So today we'd like to talk about lighting. What were you thinking? How do you want to start this conversation?
Well, you know, when things are right, sometimes you think it's normal. And then suddenly they go wrong, and then you try to find out why do they go wrong, and then you see that you have absolutely no control of it. And lighting is one of those things. I mean, for instance, I lived for 20 years in a hill town in Provence, in south of France, and entirely lit at night by, I don't know, maybe a dozen lampposts with incandescent light, 25 watt or that sort of thing, or 40 watt. And when you walked at night, you could see the stars, and it was on the hill, and you saw another hill town against the dark sky. And if you didn't know that it was a town, you thought, this is stars, because the next village was like stars in the dark sky. Because it went from the ground to the sky without difference. So the stars and the lights of the next village, which was 5 kilometers away. And then suddenly, I noticed that in the region, like there was a village 30 kilometers away, who had changed to sodium light, to high pressure sodium.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the orange light.
Right.
And we had once a year meeting with the residents of the village. So I said, look, there's something happening here. You may not know, but our village, Clavier, is lit perfectly. And people look like, oh, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I said, it is very precious. You know, at night you see the stars, people sit out and talk, and sometimes their coach lights or their windows light the street. It's perfect. And we have to preserve this, because in the village 30 kilometers away, they have just ruined it. And normally, and then the mayor was also present. He said, oh, you know, we won't do this. I said, yes, we have started, because I see ever so often one or two of these orange lights appearing. And he said, but that is by law, we are obliged to put them on crossings, on T-junctions. So I said, well, as long as you stay that way, that's fine. Then 6 months later, here come a new installation, and the lanterns were very beautiful, produced by a French company, the traditional lanterns, but they installed the sodium lights. From then on, the life in the village changed. People all looked like corpses. You know, you can't see the colors anymore between the trees and the cars. Everything is the same awful light. And then when you drive around the region and you drive around the continent, and the whole of England is polluted by this horrendous sodium light. And in the end, people begin to like it. And there is too much of it, and it destroys color, and it's impossible to impose. And I wrote articles for 20 years against this, but nobody seemed to worry. What do you worry about? In Poundbury, Prince Charles, he agreed that we should have incandescent light or that type of light, whatever the electrical performance is, but we want that kind of light. So in the first phase, I installed incandescent light. And you know what? The residents protested. They wanted the damn sodium light like all the bloody suburbs of Dorchester. So I said, 3-letter word, you, beep you. You just keep your damn light. In the next phase, we are installing what we want. When we built the second quarter, we installed against the proper light. It's because incandescent light, it's like candlelight. It's the most beautiful warm light. You know what? The residents of the first phase, they made a meeting and they decided to impose the sodium light on the second quarter. They had nothing to do with them. But then the residents of the second quarter met, and they wanted the incandescent light. So it became like
a battle over it.
It's a Swiss writer, Gottfried Keller, who's very little translated, fantastic writer, 19th century writer, who wrote about the little rivalries between urban quarters and villages and so on. And it was like a situation like this. Now, when I then moved in France to a small town in the Provence, in the Gare district, next to the Roman bridge, fantastic town, Uzès. I had a beautiful lantern on my house, but with sodium light. So I knew the chief architect was a genius who saved the Balmacière, who saved that town. He rebuilt many of the ruined buildings. People think it's history. They think, oh, this is historic. It's not history. Many of the beautiful buildings are new. He's a genius architect, but he had also no control of the light. So I took the light out of the house lantern and went to the shop 20 miles out of town. And when they saw me with this light, they said, you know, you are acting against the law. We have to denounce you. This is a police situation. I said, God damn it, it's on my house. They said, it's very dangerous to touch this bulb. I said, you mean you threaten public health? You're threatened by these lights? That's exactly what I'm looking for. I mean, it's a crazy, just to cut the long story short, the lighting industry is dominated by lobbies in Brussels or wherever, or in Washington or in Beijing, and they do what they damn want. And then in the end, the industry itself, even for instance in the United States, there is still a fantastic industry of public lighting. You know, and Washington, I always admired the mall in Washington was beautifully lit at night. It was very, very weak light bulbs, and that gives very intimate atmosphere against which the kind of semi-darkness against which the lighting of public buildings is all the more powerful. But, you know, and also in America, a lot of the fine suburbs, Myers Park or whatever they are called, or even Seaside or Windsor, they are beautifully lit. I don't know how it's in your areas, but the campuses are often beautifully lit. Yeah. But generally, there is a movement that everything should become sodium lit, and thanks God, now the LED industry lobbies have destroyed the sodium industry, replaced it. But also the LED, there are different shades of light. There's yellow, there's cold, there's warm, and so on. And people say, but I love sodium light. I say, okay, then install it in your own bedroom or in your own living room and see what happens. Because that light killed in the villages where I was, killed the nightlife. It's no longer the same, and people don't even know. And then when you find out, when you try to find out what are the regulations, you find out that it's mostly built on lies. Of course, sodium light was cheaper when compared to incandescent light, if you try to produce the same amount of lumen, of light. But those lumen numbers, they are imposed by political interest groups, totally independent of what a city needs and looks like, because they coincide, the number of lumen, you know, the light intensity with security. And the more light you have, the more secure you are, which is a lie. Because modern crime, they don't give a damn about light. You know, they carry their masks and they break in wherever they want. And so it has nothing to do with security. Light is just the eyes are extremely sensitive to light changes. And the less light you have, the more alert your eyesight is. You know? And just if you have a few lanterns, one of the most beautifully lit towns in the world is still Venice, because there are very few lanterns. And only the main squares are really highly lit, and then the lot of light becomes like a monument, you know, it's exceptional. And that is where the whole transect idea, Andres's transect idea is very important, that there is lighting for every situation, privately and also publicly, and you need to respect that. If you put an industrial airport lighting in the countryside, it destroys on a roundabout in the most beautiful village, it turns the village into a kind of prison camp. And so that this should become part of a public debate rather than be left to experts who just work for the big lobbies, the industrial lobbies, and then they impose more and more lighting standards. And then that is why our poor cities are so flooded with excessive amounts of light, and it's like they cost nothing. For instance, very importantly in Florence, always after midnight, for as long as I remember, after midnight in Florence, in Italy, every second lantern was switched off, making a lot of savings. Now, even the ecologists who dominate now most politics in Europe, they don't give a damn. Nobody speaks of switching off lights after midnight. You know, our village in the end was flooded with light. Day and night was like day, and there was nobody in the streets. I was one of the rare people walking at night in the streets, and so you light the cities for the cats who walk around the countryside. So it needs to be a public debate and a public issue, and should be taken out of the hand of the industry who just are about to make more revenue and so on.